Gabriel Milvanai Huriyah Machorai Fael Aroshi Aroshi Shekhi Nakel. Hiratzon, Parashat Shmot, Sefer Shmot. The limud should be the Ilui Neshama of the four angels, Yehuda, Tzvika, Gavriel, and Noam, that were killed 20 years ago, Parashat Shmot, in Yeshivat Otniel, in the kitchen while they were serving for Shabbat, and ended up being the greatest soldiers to save so many lives, gave their lives and their dreams, their visions, the continuation of everyone else that wasn't able to, that were, because of them, able to continue to dream. And I think that for every year, when I get to Parashat Shmot, it's a very, very different Shabbat, that we transition from a book of Breshit to a book of Shmot. And it's interesting that Sefer Breshit in Perek Yud Aleph speaks about towers, and they say Hava nivne lanu levinim. And similarly, at the beginning of Sefer Shmot, we have building towers of Pitom and Ramses. And it says there also, Hava nitchak malo. And if anyone wants to look inside and compare the story of the Tower of Babel to the towers of Egypt, they'll see a lot of linguistic connections. But really, it identifies the difference between the book of Breshit and the book of Shmot. The book of Breshit is a book about Na'aseh Lanu Shem. And it's about people that are looking to be individuals. And Avram is Agadla Shemecha. Right? It's not in plural, Shemot. It's about a Shem, your name. And the idea of Sefer Breshit is leaving Bavel, that believed that the idea of individuality was that you needed quantity. And that Avram Avinu was showing that the real idea of a person is that they have an identity and that they have purpose. And that's the story of Sefer Breshit. It's about people. From Avram to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, to Yosef, stories of individuals, of brothers, of fathers, of mothers. There's no nation. It's very much about realizing that as a person, you have to build yourself. You have to know the difference between Bavel, which believes that quantity is what makes people, similarly to things that we have today in our world. The more you have, the more you're identified. And then we have the story of Avram Avinu, that does have quantity, but that's not his definition. His definition is purpose. That he's going to have purpose to send to his children the idea of purpose. So that's Sefer Breshit. Sefer Shmot, there are no individuals. Moshe Rabbeinu is the extension of God. Sefer Shmot is about God. And the whole beginning is the war between Paro and God. If we look in this parsha in Perek Hey, in the idea of Paro being the God and God being the God, and them competing with each other and fighting with each other, because this God is what's going to define a nation, either a nation of Egypt or the nation of the Jews. And so when we go in to Sefer Shmot, it's Shemot, it's in plural. We don't want anymore just to be a good individual. We want to realize that the greatest challenge of our generation is Sefer Shmot. That so often we're so involved, even in the level of purpose, in ourselves, in our jobs, in our salaries, in our identities, in our growth, in our effect, but it's ours, it's ours, it's ours. Even the people, we're not even speaking about the level of selfishness of just not doing chesed, but even when we're doing it, that it's so absorbed in gain. And so we're going into a book that I think was the identity of the four angels that we began with. Four people that volunteered to be in the kitchen. They weren't supposed to be there. It wasn't their obligation. They let other people enjoy Shabbat, and they were serving and giving service to a nation. They were excited to be an Eved La'am Kadosh, the last act of Noam Apter, of giving his own life, of locking the kitchen doors, to make sure that everyone on the other side would be saved. And he himself, in the last act of his life, had to make that decision between saving his own life with his own gun or locking the doors of the kitchen to prevent the terrorists from getting into our friends and making Shabbat that could have been terrible for many more people. And so when we go into Sefer Shemot and we learn the stories of these four angels, we have to ask ourselves this deep question. The things that we do, even if they're the right and they're good, is really it's centered around ourselves? Is it centered around gain? Is it centered around selfishness? Or is it the beauty of being able to serve a nation and to believe that the nation is extending to Hashem and not that we're trying to defect people, but that we're trying to enable people to realize the greatest present is not that you serve Paro, is that through serving the nation, you become aware of God. Through loving the Jewish people, through loving the world, we actually learn what it means to love Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu loved the people. Vayar b'siv lotam, he didn't even know of a God. But he looked at the people, and then immediately after in Perek Gimel, he meets God. If we're able to extend ourselves, to stop thinking about our personal benefit, to stop being involved in being consumed in our own phones in the morning and the nights before we go to sleep when we wake up, then we'll start feeling the bliss of Hashem. B'ezrat Hashem, it should be a Lui Neshama and so much comfort to the four families that have always been dealing with this on a daily basis.